UFC Shanghai takes place this weekend, and I'm here to give you my full card picks, prediction, breakdown. I'm a little bit late. Usually, I want to get these videos out by Monday, Tuesday latest, but it's been a busy week. This card actually takes place on Saturday at 3 a.m. Eastern Time. So, if you're on the East Coast, you might want to grab an energy drink or some coffee because it's going to be a late Friday night. We're going to hop right into it with the first bout of the night. We have Uran Saidi Baldiev and Dr. Nurgache. This fight to me is a little bit interesting. Nurgache came in like 4 pounds over in his debut. He ended up getting submitted by Brendan Ibero. A lot of people think that's a real bad loss, but I think Brendan Ibero is decent. So I'm not going to take too much away from him on that. He just did not look that good in the fight. I don't know if there was some sort of illness or some reason that he was missing weight so much or by so much. But I'm going to go with Uran Saidi Baldiev. I thought he looked pretty solid in his short notice debut up a weight class at heavyweight. He took on Martin Buday. And, say what you want about Martin Buday, but he doesn't lose. He was 7-1 in the UFC before being released from the promotion. And Uran Saidi Baldiev had a pretty massive weight discrepancy in that fight. And he held his own. He looked pretty strong in there for the size he was at. I think he was 40 pounds, 43 pounds lighter than Martin Buday. He looked good in the striking. He had 3-round cardio against a much bigger guy. And I thought he had some pretty solid moments of his own in that fight. Now, he's going to be taking on Dr. Nurgache, who's going to be closer to his size, also potentially a little bit faster. But Nurgache didn't really impress me at all against Brendan Hiberio in his last fight. I thought Uran looked like a pretty promising prospect. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage, and it's the battle of stands here, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Give me the guy who looked better in his first, fight in the UFC. Both of these guys are 0-1 in the UFC. I think Uran Saudi Baldiev is primed and ready to go to get his first win inside the octagon. I think he's just going to be a little bit better in the striking. I think he's going to be stronger in the wrestling as well based on what I've seen from him. So I'm going to go with Uran Saudi Baldiev here, probably by something once. I kind of want to say a sloppy decision, but I think he has a chance to get him out of there by knockout or TKO as well. And then we'll move to the next bout. We have a bantamweight bout between Xiao Long and Su Young Yu. Now, this is actually a pretty tough one to call. Su Young Yu is a very tenacious grappler and wrestler. He looked good against AJ Cunningham in his UFC debut. He ended up finishing AJ Cunningham. I believe he finished AJ Cunningham in the third round. He looked good. AJ Cunningham is not the best fighter. We've seen him at lightweight. We've seen him at featherweight. And then he was drained all the way down to 135 in his last bout. But Su Young Yu was pretty decent. He's good with his pressure. He has cardio. And then on the other side, we have Xiao Long. I think Xiao Long's pretty good. He won his last fight by second round knockout. I cannot remember the guy's name. But the guy he fought Chris Gutierrez on short notice, and he looked pretty good there. I actually picked the other guy, and Xiao Long ends up getting him out of there in the second round. This fight is hard to call, man. I mean, to be fair, I haven't done the most research on this one, just going off what I remember. You would think that Su Young Yu is going to be able to use his wrestling to potentially win a control-based and ground and pound with some success in the striking as well, 29-28 decision. But something's telling me to pick Xiao Long. I want to pick Xiao Long here. He has more experience. He's going to be the taller fighter. He has a 5-inch reach advantage. It's just going to be, can Xiao Long deal with the wrestling here? They're fighting in Shanghai. We got a Chinese prospect in Xiao Long. So you got to think with these corrupt-ass judges that if it's a close decision and it doesn't look completely one-sided, it might be going to the side of Xiao Long. So you know what? Actually, I was thinking about picking Su Young Yu, and then now that I'm here talking about it, just based off vibes, I'm going to go with what I think is a dog shot in Xiao Long. I have not looked at the odds for this card yet because I want to be as unbiased as possible. And now making a biased pick by picking the Chinese fighter in China. But let me get Xiao Long as an underdog here. But disclaimer, Su Young Yu could go out there with a very wrestling-heavy, control-based, ground and pound, submission attempts, and find his way to a 29-28, 30-27 decision as well. This is really a pick'em fight, in my opinion, because we haven't seen all too much from these guys at the UFC level yet. They both looked impressive in their debuts. Give me Xiao Long in China. Fuck it. We're going with Xiao Long in China. But that's a tough pick, man. If you're confident in Su Young Yu, go with Su Young Yu because he could definitely get it done. That's a close fight. Next, we have Yi Za versus Weston Wilson. Now, this one should be pretty cut and dry. I can only assume Weston Wilson is a massive underdog in this fight. He has been an underdog in every single bout he's been in. He did have that Hail Mary sub against Jekka, but Jekka isn't necessarily the best fighter. His other losses, Joe Anderson Brito and Gene Silva, those guys are both dogs, so I can't take anything away from him there. He's not the youngest. He will be taller and have a reach advantage in this fight, but I think he's is very good in the grappling department, and I think he'll be able to deal with Weston Wilson's jiu-jitsu. Give me Yi Zha here. I don't know the method of victory. If I had to call something, I'm going to go potentially a knockout via ground and pound. Weston Wilson we could probably see Weston Wilson, pulling for a knee bar or something that's going to put him in a compromised position, and then Yi Zha could potentially rain down some ground and pound. I think Yi Zha inside the distance here is probably a good call. I'm sure the line's going to be ridiculous. This is probably a no-bet fight unless you're taking Weston Wilson by submission for a Hail Mary. It's probably going to be pretty great odds. So I have to go with Yi Zha here. I'm pretty sure everyone's going with Yi Zha here, not reinventing the wheel. Next bout, we have a middleweight fight between Michel Pereira and Kyle Daukaus. Kyle Daukaus is coming in on short notice to take this fight. He was released from the promotion a couple years ago. I believe he has 4 or 5 wins, and almost all of them come by finish outside of the UFC. He's 11-4 versus the very experienced and also younger Michel Pereira. Michel Pereira is 31, I believe, and Kyle Daukaus is 32. This guy already has 45 professional fights. He's going to be shorter. He's going to have a reach disadvantage, but I can see Michel Pereira getting it done by knockout in the first round, just based on his athleticism, his explosive striking, and Kyle Daukaus is a little bit thinner. He's not really the best built for the division, especially against a powerhouse like Pereira. But at the same time, Michel Pereira might have looked the worst I've ever seen a fighter look in the UFC. His last bout against Abus Magomedov, I mean, to be fair, Abus looked god-awful as well. It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. They were at least throwing, but it was slow and sloppy, no cardio. I told myself I was never going to pick Michel Pereira again. I'm just waiting to fade Michel Pereira. But at the same time, he is getting Kyle Daukaus on short notice. Do I see a likelihood where Kyle Daukaus could survive and potentially find a submission of his own or a control-based decision? Yes. Do I think he makes it out of the first round? Probably not. Michel Pereira, to his defense, was on a tear in the middleweight division up until he fought Anthony Hernandez. No knock on that. Got brutalized in that fight. And then one of the weirdest, most bizarre, sloppy, slow fights I've ever seen against Abus Magomedov. It was terrible, but I think, unfortunately, I have to pick Michel Pereira here. I think he's going to be too much for Daukaus in the striking department. I can see him defending a takedown or two in the first round, keeping the fight on the feet, and finding the knockout. So we're going to go with Michel Pereira, round 1 knockout in this fight. I have to. It hurts my soul to do it. He looked so terrible in his last fight. But we're going to rock with Michel Pereira. And I got to say, I'm rooting for Kyle Daukaus 100%. Next, we have a lightweight bout between Rong Zhu and Austin Hubbard. Austin Hubbard is typically very tough. He's a well-rounded fighter, good wrestling, good striking, solid jiu-jitsu game. Rong Zhu is actually very young, though. He's 26-6. He has a lot of professional experience, and he is still pretty young. I think he's 25 years old. The reach and height are both going to be very similar here. And I got to say, I think Rong Zhu is primed to get Austin Hubbard out of there. I don't know if Austin Hubbard ever has been knocked out. He's typically pretty durable. But I'm going to go with Rong Zhu by knockout here. I think he could find a TKO win. He was looking all right against Chris Taco Padilla. He ended up getting opened up by an elbow that ultimately stopped the fight. But in his last matchup against Cody Steele, he looked incredible. I know those guys train together, and I know it's a much different fight when fighters have gotten looks from each other in the past on the training, in the training mats, on the training mats, whatever the fuck you want to say. But Rong Zhu looked really impressive to me in his last fight. His striking looked incredible. Could I see him getting wrestled up by Austin Hubbard? Potentially, but this dude is tough, man. Rong Zhu is a very, very tough fighter, and I can see him finding a way to get it done. This is a feeling that I have. It's a vibe. Austin Hubbard is good, so it's a concerning pick for sure, but I think Rong Zhu, all he has to do is keep this fight on the feet, and Austin Hubbard is going to be a little bit out of his depth here. I think Rong Zhu has some solid striking and some solid power, and I think he is live here to get Austin Hubbard out of there. Based on Austin Hubbard's durability, the line for Rongju to get a knockout could be pretty juicy. I have not looked at the lines yet, but tomorrow I'll be dropping my favorite props, best bets, and parlays video. So be on the lookout for that. Rongju by knockout could be in that favorite prop section. Also, if you're here, make sure to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. If you got homies that love mixed martial arts, UFC, Dana White's Contender Series, I'm trying to drop consistent content every single week, doing breakdowns, best bet videos, recaps, and then conversation pieces as well. So we're going to go with Rongju in the lightweight bout over Austin Hubbard, potentially finding a finish. And next we have a banger. Charles Johnson and Loney Kavanaugh at flyweight. Kavanaugh is one of the most hyped prospects in the division right now. He's looked incredible in his career so far. Amazing Dana White's Contender Series performance. And in his last bout, he fought Jose Ochoa, who has proven to be pretty awesome in his own respect. We knew that was a close fight. Kavanaugh ended up having the edge on the damage and winning that one on the scorecards. Charles Johnson is a tough out, man. He's a tough out for anybody. I know he's getting a little bit older, but he is going to have a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. He is a lot more experienced. If he doesn't get finished early, I see a real likelihood we see a Charles Johnson win here. And Charles Johnson doesn't typically get finished. I don't think he's ever been finished. He loses decisions because he gets controlled for the first 2 rounds and then wins the 3rd round. 29-28 is how he loses. But I think he's live here. I think he's not out of his, depth in striking. He can box at range. He's solid everywhere, man. He can wrestle. He has great cardio, probably some of the best cardio we've ever seen in this division, if I'm being real. Me and my buddy Nick talk about it. It's a shame he never gets a 5-round fight because he would drown people in a 5-round fight. So this is going to be the first dog shot, the first confident dog shot of the night. Obviously, Loney Kavanaugh is a very good fighter. He has incredible striking. And he's pretty well-rounded as well. Obviously, if it was up to Kavanaugh, he'd probably keep the fight on the feet. But I think Charles Johnson will be able to mix in some wrestling, have success on the feet, boxing, keeping a little bit of range. He has the reach advantage. So I'm going to go out on a whim and say Charles Johnson, 29-28 decision in this fight. He did beat Josh Van. Josh Van is a streaking contender. He's fighting for the title next. Just beat Brandon Royval in the fight of the year. Charles Johnson, only guy to beat Josh Van in the UFC so far. And they keep giving him tough matchups. I want to say that. Charles Johnson and the disrespect that he has received through his UFC career is absolutely ridiculous. Charles Johnson continues to show up and prove that he's one of the best guys in this division, and they just keep giving him a guy with 1 fight, a guy on a debut, these undefeated fucking prospects, and he's taken a lot of them out, and then they just give him another one. And that's what they're doing here. He's coming off a loss to Ramazan Tamarov, where he was controlled for a while, and, it was a close fight. I thought there was an argument that Charles Johnson could have won that fight. But he loses, and now they're giving him another up-and-coming stud in Loney Kavanaugh. I'm pulling for energy. Charles Johnson is my guy, and I think he can get it done on the scorecards, winning both rounds 2 and round 3 after surviving an early onslaught from Loney Kavanaugh. Let's go. Energy Charles Johnson, baby. And then we move to a lightweight bout between Mahashate and Gage Young. Mahashate is not too bad. He's not too good either, though. We just saw him kind of get his ass whooped by Nicholas Mata in his last fight. And we called that too, by the way. Nicholas Mata was an underdog. Mahashate, he has left a lot to be desired. He did have that knockout over Steve Garcia at lightweight. Garcia has since moved to featherweight and has been on an absolute tear. So that's a decent win. But we saw him lose. He got pieced the fuck up by Borishev Slavaklaus, who in his own respect is a very talented striker as well. But I think Gage Young is going to have the durability to withstand whatever Mahashate has to throw at him, and I think he's going to come back with volume and power and potentially win this fight by knockout. I thought Gage Young looked really good in his debut. It was a short notice debut against Evan Elder. Evan Elder is a solid prospect, man. I'm pretty high on Evan Elder, to be honest, and I was telling my friends when this fight was going on, Evan Elder, Gage Young, get ready. Evan Elder's going to put on a fucking masterclass. And then Gage Young went out there and he was tough and he was willing to stand in the fire and exchange. And he had his own success in that fight. And I rate Evan Elder very highly. So I'm going to have to go with Gage Young here. I think he could potentially get it done via knockout. But I don't know the odds. I would assume they're not too wide. So I think Gage Young money line, money line could be a pretty solid play here, or a parlay piece as well. I like Gage Young. I'm really rooting for him here. I think he can get it done over Mahashate. The knockout prop is interesting, or could be interesting. I could be swayed if the odds are juicy. Next, we got Tylake Naraji versus Kiefer Crosby in the welterweight division. This fight, I don't know too much about Tylake, but I got to go with him here. We have 10-5. Kiefer Crosby, he's a boxing style fighter. He fought in Bellator. He's going to be the shorter guy by, I believe, 3 inches, and I think he's going to have a sizable reach disadvantage as well. As you can see on here, it says that Naraji has a 0-inch reach. If that was the case, that means he doesn't have arms, and he's probably going to lose this fight. But that is not the case here. I can't go with Kiefer Crosby. Plain and simple, I just can't go with Kiefer Crosby. I'm going to go with the up-and-coming contender. He's fighting out of China. This looks like a showcase bout to me. We're going to go with Tylake Naraji inside the distance. I didn't do much research on this one. I just knew I wasn't picking Kiefer Crosby. So we'll move on to the next fight. And this is an interesting one. We have Sumadarji versus Kevin Borjas at a flyweight bout. I'm interested to see the odds for this one. Immediately when I saw this fight, I wanted to pick Kevin Borjas. He looked really good against Ronaldo Rodriguez in his last fight. Had a decently, not close, but he held his own against Joshua Van as well. Ended up getting TKO'd by Alessandro Costa, who's a power puncher. But Sumadarji actually is pretty good, man. He has pretty solid striking, and he's going to be taller. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage. I'm finding myself wanting to pick Sumadarji here. Kevin Borjas does have a lot of knockouts, but Sumadarji almost primarily solely loses via submission. He has 7 losses, 6 of which come by submission, 1 by decision, and that decision loss is to Charles Johnson in a fight where Sumadarji actually looked pretty good, and he made Charles Johnson work quite a bit. Kevin Borjas has no submissions on his record. So this is going to be a straight-up striking match. Kevin Borjas outmatched Ronaldo Rodriguez on the feet, 100%. But we've kind of come to realize that Ronaldo Rodriguez is a bit one-dimensional in his striking. He doesn't really have a technical game. He's kind of just a dog in there, and Sumadarji is a bit more technical. So I think it's going to be a different matchup, a different stylistic threat that Sumadarji poses on the feet. I think he's a lot better of a striker than Ronaldo Rodriguez. And like I said, I wanted to pick Kevin Borjas here, but Sumadarji is just talking to me, man. Unless Kevin Borjas gets his first submission of his career, I don't see Sumadarji get knocked out on the feet, and I don't think that he's a worse striker than Kevin Borjas. Fuck it, we're going with Sumadarji. I hope he's the underdog. But something's telling me, man, Kevin Borjas is good, and he looked really good against Ronaldo Rodriguez, but that was Ronaldo Rodriguez, and Sumadarji looked pretty good against Charles Johnson. So give me Sumadarji, 29-28 decision. He's going to do the better work on the feet. I just have a feeling about that one after wanting to pick Kevin Borjas. Next, we have a pretty solid fight at heavyweight. We got Sergey Pavlovich and Waldo Cortez Acosta. I've typically picked against Waldo Cortez Acosta, and he continues to win time and time again. Sergey Pavlovich, at one point, was the most feared contender in the heavyweight division. He was knocking everybody out in the first round. And since then, we've seen him kind of not get exposed, but get outclassed by Alexander Volkov. When you take a technical approach, stick, move, and just don't engage in the brawl with Sergey Pavlovich, because he'll just wing hooks over and over until he finds one and knocks you out. But after Sergey lost to Alexander Volkov in his next fight, I cannot remember who he fought, but he fought his way to a lackluster, low-volume decision. Actually, let me look that up, because Sergey Pavlovich did not look great in his last fight. He fought, I have to look it up. It was against Jairzinho Rosenstrike, and to be fair, Jairzinho's a pretty good striker, but he just looked tentative. He looked apprehensive to engage, different than what we've seen from him, because when he fought Alexander Volkov, he was trying it, and it just was not working. Waldo Cortez Acosta continues to win. He looked impressive in his last bout against Ryan Spann, and man, I want to pick against Waldo Cortez Acosta so bad here. I want to pick against him, but I feel like he's just going to prove me wrong yet again. I can see Waldo Cortez Acosta doing something similar to Alexander Volkov. I mean, he doesn't really use the kicks as much as Volkov, but I can see him using his technical boxing to stay safe from the danger of Pavlovich and potentially finding a win on the scorecards, He's going to be the bigger guy, too. It says he has a 14-inch reach disadvantage. That cannot be right. That is absolutely not right. 70-inch reach for Costa, 84 for Pavlovich. That's definitely not right. But, this pick is tough, man. I want I want to say Sergey by knockout, but nothing tells me, based on what we've seen from Acosta so far, that he's going to go out there and get starched. Oh, man. I think I'm going to go with Waldo Cortez Acosta by decision. I think that, he's surging right now. He has a lot of confidence. And as we saw, Sergey Pavlovich did not look like the Sergey Pavlovich of old in his last bout against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, kind of after getting tuned up by Alexander Volkov. We'll see if Pavlovich is back to his killer ways and maybe he goes for broke and finds an early knockout. But I think Waldo Cortez Acosta will find a way to stay safe, potentially mix in a little bit of wrestling, and box Pavlovich up on the feet. I could see a 29-28 or a 30-27 decision, but Sergey Pavlovich by knockout, if the odds are what they could be, plus 300 or higher, that could be worth a favorite prop play as well. But I'm going to just go with the surgeon guy in Waldo Cortez Acosta. And it's funny because this is the first time I'm picking Costa. I typically always have picked against him and I've been wrong every time. So I'm going to pick him this time and he's going to lose. But I got to go with my gut. I got to go with Waldo Cortez Acosta. And next we have the co-main event of the evening. Aljamain Sterling and Brian Ortega at featherweight. Aljamain Sterling's real good, man. His wrestling is, second to none. He has some of the best wrestling in the lower divisions. Brian Ortega is a pretty sick jiu-jitsu threat, though. And I think he's going to be the better striker here. I really, sometimes I do wish I looked at the odds because I could be swayed either direction if one of these guys was a big underdog. But my head is telling me Brian Ortega can win this fight. Aljamain Sterling, he's going to have the pressure. He's going to he has that awkward style of striking. He's going to use that to get in, shoot takedowns, garner control time. I don't think he's going to want to wrestle as much as he usually does, though, against Brian Ortega. And I think that's going to be his path to victory. If this fight stays on the feet, Brian Ortega wins. And if this fight goes to the ground, Aljamain Sterling is going to be in danger at all times due to the submission threat and scrambling abilities of Brian Ortega. So I've now talked myself into picking Brian Ortega. I kind of wanted to take Aljamain Sterling, but if I think Ortega has the advantage on the feet, and if I think that Aljamain Sterling is going to be an immense amount of danger when he's on the ground, which is his one path to victory, I think Brian Ortega can take this. Aljamain Sterling could potentially get submitted here. And if he feels that threat and stops wrestling, he's going to be stuck in a striking match with Brian Ortega, where Aljamain Sterling isn't a bad striker, but I think Brian Ortega might be a little bit better. And Ortega typically is very durable as well. I don't think Aljamain Sterling is going to have any stopping power here, and I don't think he's going to be able to throw anything that causes Ortega to want to stop fighting on the feet. And like I said, I don't see Ortega in much danger on the ground unless Aljamain just really finds some dominant control in a position where Ortega can't get his jiu-jitsu off or scramble out of a situation. I don't know, man. Something tells me Aljamain should win, but I feel like Brian Ortega is just going to be the more dangerous fighter, and I think he's better on the feet. I think he's going to be just fine on the ground. Outside of if he just gets too comfortable in guard, the submissions aren't working, and he ends up losing a close decision based on control from Aljamain. I'm going to go with the guy with the higher likelihood of finishing this fight, and I'm going to go with Brian Ortega. I don't think he's done yet. I know he wants to make one last push. He's not very old. So, yeah, Brian Ortega, potentially by submission. Odds could be juicy on that one. Excuse me. And next we have the main event. Johnny Walker and Zhang Mingyang in a light heavyweight bout. And boy, am I pulling for Johnny Walker. Where's my card? Boy, am I pulling for my boy Johnny Walker. Shout out CST, if you can see this. Hopefully it doesn't mess up my camera resolution there. But I got the PSA 9 signed Johnny Walker. I love Johnny Walker. I am certainly pulling for him here in this fight. But all things are pointing to Zhang Mingyang to win by first round knockout. Johnny Walker gets put away. He gets put away often, and it's typically in cartoonish fashion. So if I had to make a realistic pick here outside of my bias, it's going to be Zhang Mingyang by first round knockout. He does have a reach disadvantage and a height disadvantage, but this guy has been knocking out everybody that he fights. Johnny Walker, probably the best guy he's fought so far, but at the same time, Johnny Walker is very chinny, susceptible to getting knocked out, kind of keeps his head up a little bit, and he has a very, what's the word? I want to say dangerous striking style, but dangerous for him. He tends to overextend. He likes to do spinning stuff. He has the skills, man. Johnny Walker has the skills. It's just he doesn't have the durability. And like I said, I'm pulling for Johnny Walker, and you could find me taking a dog shot on him this weekend just out of pure bias in that I want him to win. But the realistic pick is going to have to be Zhang Mingyang. This is going to be a striking fight for as long as it lasts. I'm sure it's going to be explosive. It's going to be fireworks, and the fireworks are going to result in Zhang Mingyang finding a first-round knockout over Johnny Walker. I hate to say it. I want to pick Johnny Walker. I could see him getting this fight to the ground and winning by submission, but it's hard to pick my boy Johnny. Fuck it. I want to pick Johnny Walker so bad. But if people are watching this and they're looking for the logical picks based on what we're seeing as of late from these fighters, the realistic logical pick here is Zhang Mingyang. I will probably mention some Johnny Walker props on my favorite bets video. So be on the lookout for those if you're feeling like a degen. But we got to go Zhang Mingyang, first round knockout. I'm excited for this card. It's kind of a shame that it starts at 3 a.m. Eastern time. But we going to be up. I'm going to get off work at 1:30 in the morning, drive over to my buddy's house, make some food, and stay up all night and watch these fights. It's going to be a good time. Be on the lookout for my favorite props, best bets, favorite dogs, parlays, lottos video. I'll be dropping that tomorrow. And of course, always do your own research, bet responsibly, and have fun watching the fights. If you're here and you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and let me know your favorite underdog of the week, your favorite pick of the week, and your favorite prop of the week in the comments. It's going to be a good one. Hopefully, we get some violence on this card, and I'll be back for more videos ASAP. Let's get it. Mike Talks Fights.